Hey friends, welcome back to Homestead on a Prayer. If you remember, a couple days ago we did a little harvest tour of my garden and we harvested a big bunch of kale together. And we are also going to preserve that kale. We're going to dehydrate some of it and turn it into kale powder, and we're going to freeze some of it. That video was a little bit long, so I decided to split it into a couple separate videos. So today's just going to be a quick little video of just going through the process of dehydrating that kale. So let's go in the kitchen. I'll meet you there and I'll show you exactly what I did to preserve my kale. Okay, so I brought in our big pile of kale that we harvested together a few hours ago. It's just been sitting on my counter for a couple hours. It's okay for what we're doing if it dries out a little bit. I didn't get a chance to deal with it right away, so it's been sitting on the counter. So basically how we're going to prepare this kale is, see these really thick stems here? Those are really tough. We don't want those. So we're just gonna kind of take our fingers and strip all the leaf part off, and then we're going to tear this into pieces. Now I have 6 of these trays that go in my dehydrator. I'm going to fill these up with as much kale as I can pack into them. And then whatever kale we have extra that won't fit in there, I'm just going to put into a Ziploc baggie here, and I'm just going to put it directly in the freezer. No blanching or anything else like that needed. It's very simple. And then the frozen kale, when I want to use it in the winter, what I'll do is just take out a handful and kind of crumble it into a soup or something like that, and it'll work great. So I'm just going to go ahead removing all of the stems from our kale. I'm going to tear them into pieces, probably about the size that you would use for kale chips. And I'm just going to get my dehydrator trays filled with kale. So we're back to take a look at our dehydrated kale. I know in the video clip I showed you that I set the dehydrator to run for 5 hours. I actually changed it to 4 hours because my dehydrator is really loud when it ends, and it was set to go off while everyone was sleeping. So I set it for 4 hours instead. I checked it in the morning and it wasn't done, so I ran it for another 2 hours. So it ran for 6 hours total. I ran it on 122 degrees. Probably 125 would be ideal, but mine doesn't have a setting for that, so 122 it is. So we're going to check on the kale. I'm pretty sure that it is all dehydrated now. So you can see this has shrunk considerably. Remember, this was covering the entire tray before, but now it's a lot. It's much smaller. So when it crumbles like this and there isn't really any flexibility left to it, that's what we're looking for. That means it's completely done. So I have here a coffee grinder. This is not the same coffee grinder that I use to grind coffee in. I have a separate one that I use just for spices and things like this. So I'm going to get this loaded up with our kale. We're going to grind it into a fine powder, and then I'm going to show you one thing that I like to do with it. So I'm going to kind of crumble it up a little bit as I put it in here just to make sure that it's all able to fit. I'm probably going to have to run this in a couple batches, and then I will show you what it looks like. So it has shrunk quite a bit while it was dehydrating. It's going to shrink even more when we turn it into powder. The bad news is that it means you need a lot of kale to get a little bit of powder. The good news is that means that in every little teaspoon or half teaspoon of powder, there is a lot of kale packed into that, so you don't need much to get some solid nutrition. Now look how much kale we have packed in here. I've really packed it in well too. This is 2 full trays of kale. So we're going to go ahead and grind it up. And this is going to turn into a small amount of powder pretty quickly. Just spit it on here. Okay, so with anything that you're grinding to a really fine powder, you want to make sure and kind of let the dust settle before you open it. I have definitely opened it too early more than once and ended up with a cloud of kale powder, onion powder, or whatever kind of powder I'm making in my face. We obviously want to avoid that. This has been sitting for a minute or so, and so hopefully it's ready. So I have a repurposed spice jar here, and I have a funnel. We're just going to pour our kale powder into this jar, and we'll see how much we get. This so far is 2 trays from the dehydrator, so this is a third of what we dehydrated. So here's what it looks like when it's all powdered. You can see it's shrunk quite a bit. We're gonna go ahead and pour that into our jar here and see how much we got. Okay, so this is how much we have so far. So we're gonna end up with a total of about 3 times this amount, which actually isn't too bad, because to get a full serving of kale, you will not need very much powder. I don't know the exact measurements, but it's not going to be very much. All right, so let's load up our next batch of kale and we'll get some more powder made. Okay, so from that giant bunch of kale that we harvested, we did freeze some of it, but from probably about 2/3 of it or so, we got this little jar of kale powder. So this is really concentrated. There's lots of vitamins in here. This is going to be great to add some nice nutrients to our food in the winter. So for today, I am going to make a smoothie. So hiding this in a smoothie is a great way to use this kale powder for somebody who maybe doesn't really like the taste of kale or doesn't really like to eat their vegetables. I know I have made this for my kids a few times, and it took several times of making it before they had any idea that this was even in there. So you can hide it pretty easily in a smoothie. So we're just gonna make a quick smoothie today. It's a really hot day, and so that is going to be a great way to use some of this kale powder on a hot day. So when I make a smoothie, I don't really have a recipe that I follow or like a set formula or anything, but you always do wanna have some liquid, and it's usually better to put liquid in first. So for today, we're doing coconut milk. So I'm gonna start with just a little bit of that. We'll see if that's enough. We'll add more if we need to. I usually add something to make it creamy, like in this case, yogurt. I probably don't really need this time since I have the coconut milk, but we're gonna do it anyway and see how it comes out. Plus it gives you some good protein in the smoothie too. A little bit of banana is always good. Whenever I have bananas that are starting to go bad, I always either turn them into banana bread or stick them in the freezer, and they make great smoothies. Now I have here, these are not frozen, I have some blueberries that we picked the other day. So we're gonna add these in here. And I've got some frozen blackberries. So you can see we've got a mix of frozen and fresh ingredients in here. And of course, we can't forget our secret ingredient, which is kale powder. This is gonna make enough, this is probably gonna make a couple smoothies. So I'm gonna put about a teaspoon of kale powder in there. You don't really need to measure or be precise. Just put it in there, and especially the dark color of the berries, no one will even know it's there. All right, so let's blend this up. We're probably going to need a little more liquid, but we'll blend this up and find out. All right, so we're gonna taste this. Looks like not everything got incorporated, but so we'll have to run it a little more, but I'm gonna taste it anyway and see if it needs anything else. That's good, but I think it needs more berries. So I'm going to run it a little bit longer, and while it's running, I'm going to get some more blueberries prepped for it. So we're gonna add some more of these fresh blueberries and see how this is. All right, let's see how it is. Got a fresh spoon to taste test. All right, seems like everything's incorporated better this time. Yep, that's perfect, and you would never know there's kale in there. So if you have any other ways that you use kale powder, leave a comment and let me know, because I would love to find some more ways to use this. All right, so I'll see you again soon. I hope you're having a great day, and I'll talk to you later. Bye.